In today's video, I'm going to walk you through some of my custom video settings for the Olympus OMD EM1 MKII mirrorless camera. Now this will also apply to the OMD EM1 MKIII, which is essentially the same camera. They updated the firmware in this a little while back, and it basically puts it on par with the Olympus OMD EM1 MKIII. That's hard to say. Anyway, I'm going to show you why I make these changes along the way as well, and what I found works the best. A little while back, I posted a video about the phase detection autofocus in this camera being one of the best that I've ever used. And a lot of people were asking me how I went about these particular settings, and that's what this video is about. If it's helpful, please give a thumbs up. I appreciate that. Let me know your particular types of settings in the comments below. I'm going to walk you through mine right now. Here we go. First up, I wanted to show you how to get to the super control panel, because sometimes if you've upgraded an older camera, it won't have it enabled by default. Firstly, hit the menu button on the back of the camera. You want to go down to the third option on the right here, which is the video menu. Click across and go down to display settings, hit right, go to control settings and hit right, and make sure that live SCP super control panel is enabled and live control is disabled. Then hit OK. Now, one thing to take note of with this camera that infuriated me is the white balance settings. Auto works extremely well. If it's a bright sunny day, you can pick sunny and so forth. You can go through and pick the one that works best for you. In this room, I would use the fluorescent light because I've got basically 5600 Kelvin lights, or that's thereabouts anyway. That's usually what I leave it on. Now, every time you select a different one of these, everything that you customize in the super control panel changes. It's really frustrating, so you have to go through and do each one, which is why I recommend just leaving it on auto most of the time if you don't want to have to keep fiddling with your camera. Now, if we go one turn to the right here, we can go from the A and G settings. Now, here is where I like to bring these down to -4. I found this camera just looked way too green with the green set to 0. I don't like the look of this. It reminds me a little bit of the GH5, which before you customize it, and you have to be very aggressive with these settings. So pull them down to either -4 or -5. I usually leave both of these set to -4. By turning the top dial to the right, we can then access the autofocus area, which is one of the most important settings. Now, I didn't know about this when I first got this camera, but as you can see, that's the phase detection points basically lighting up the whole screen, which is what you want. When you get this by default, I think it's set to either one of these two, which means anything you put in the center will become in focus, but anything to the side and it will miss focus. So the best thing to do here is to set it up for all of these points, which means anytime something comes into the frame, it's going to be in focus. Now, I'm using a lens that's the 15mm f1.7 prime, and this works great with this particular camera. I've had no problems with it whatsoever. Now, there's a few other settings here that you do need to customize as well. You go down over to the smiley face here and click on this. Now, people will have mixed results with this depending on your particular situation, but I leave face priority on. You can then go to face and eye priority, but I've just found for what I use, this particular setting is by far the best. You can choose right eye if you so choose, or left. I just leave it on face priority on. Now, when it comes to the color profiles, I mostly stick to the natural profile. I don't use OM log whatsoever. I had really sort of mixed results with that. I color grade a lot of footage from other cameras, but I didn't enjoy the process color grading from this. So to access the natural profile, click on the top right over here and hit OK to access the menu. Use that top dial again to scroll through the ones that you choose to use. For me, I'm sticking to natural. I just feel that this adds the best straight out of camera color. Now, if we go back to the main menu here, we go to sharpness, have this all the way down at -2. One of my biggest criticisms of this particular camera is just how sharp it is if you leave it at 0. It's way too sharp. So pull that all the way down and it's still plenty sharp. I think, in my opinion, it looks the best. Now, when it comes to the saturation, I like to leave this at -1, but feel free to pull it all the way down to -2 if you want to add more back in post. But just for that great straight out of camera color and saturation, I leave this at -1. It gave me the best results. Now, being that I'm in a PAL region, I shoot in 4K 25p, but if you want to change this, you can simply hit OK and then hit Info, and it will allow you to change the frame rate at the top here from 25 to 30 or 24p. I love that this camera has all three. So if you change regions or you go overseas, you can simply go to 30p if you're in North America, or 25p if you're in Australia, or wherever else uses PAL. So I think that's really good. That will help reduce the light flicker rate or issues with any type of filming. So that's really, really cool. On the top right of the camera, there's a shortcut key to the next option, but you can still access it via the super control panel. It's FN2, or if you're going through the super control panel, just go over to highlights and shadows control. And you can see I've got the highlights now set to -5. This made the biggest difference to the dynamic range of the camera. With this at 0 outdoors, it was overblown. Put this at -5 and it helps control the highlights to no end. Now, if you choose to, you can change up the shadow as well. And the way I'm doing this, by the way, if you're wondering, I'm just literally pushing up and down on the control keys here to change those particular options. So it's as easy as that. Once you get into the menu, push the up or down to change the highlights, and you're in business. So you can change this to wherever you like, all the way down to -7. But for me, -5 works really well. Now, if you're going to be doing any sort of vlogging, this camera is an absolute beast for vlogging. The stabilization in this is second to none in my experience. So I'll show you how I set this up. So when it comes to the stabilization, there's two separate modes, MIS1 and MIS2. I like to use MIS1. Now, it does crop in a little bit more, as you can see here, but you get better stabilization if you're walking at regular speed. If you're not going to be walking too fast and you want a wider field of view, you can choose the second mode, but I much prefer this with 12 or 15mm lenses. If you're using something like a 20mm or something like that, you'll probably want to choose this second one just so you're in shot if you're using it handheld. So that's how I like to use it. Now we push the info button on the back of the camera and we can choose the lens millimeter range that we're using. So I'm using a 15mm, which is why it's set to 15. If I swap over to my 12mm, I'm going to push this down to 12mm by using the up and down buttons on the back of the camera. And then I'm going to hit OK wherever I have it set. This is a really great feature I haven't seen in too many other cameras. This will allow you to change lenses and also have the IBIS react in different ways depending on which lens you're using. So there you have it. That's my video settings for the Olympus OMD EM1 MKII. I've used this vlogging, I've used it stationary, I've used it in the studio, I've used it in a number of different situations. But anytime I'm using this outdoors to get those great straight out of camera colors and results, they're the settings that I use. So I hope this has been helpful. Thanks again for watching. Let me know your thoughts on this particular video. And if it was helpful, please drop a thumbs up. I appreciate that. Catch you soon. See ya.